The new SSR Animus Lilium is here. Given that she is a light dark unit and costs 3 times more than normal SSRs, you might expect her to be overpowered. Well, you might be very disappointed. And yeah, being a light dark unit, expectations were, sky high, weren't they? Especially considering how rare they are and, let's be honest, how much she costs to get. There was definitely a feeling she could, completely shake things up.
Well, absolutely. And that's really our mission for this deep dive today. We want to unpack those first impressions, see how she's actually performing now that people have her. Does she actually live up to that overpowered label you'd expect from such a premium extensive character? Because honestly, from what we're seeing, from the early feedback, the testing, the consensus seems to be she's, well, quite underwhelming. A bit of a letdown, frankly, which is a massive surprise, really, given all that potential. So let's maybe start with how the game itself describes her. Lilam's officially tagged as an offensive animus. Built for burst damage, execute mechanics, finishing off those low health enemies, and also crowd control. Plus, and this sounds really key on paper, she has this crucial control immunity built in as a passive. It really paints this picture of an unstoppable kind of unit.
Yeah, that description sounds amazing, doesn't it? Like she should just walk through everything. But okay, let's peel back those layers. Let's dig into her specific skills and see what they promise versus what they actually seem to deliver. So, kicking things off, skill 1 is called Wields Lightning. Pretty straightforward. Deals damage, single target, and she gets some health back based on the damage dealt. And right away, baseline, she has immunity to all control effects. That sounds like a really solid starting point.
It does sound solid, but here's where you really need to pay attention and where the investment comes in. For Wields Lightning to be truly effective, you absolutely definitely need to invest Lattices into it. Those are the skill upgrade points for anyone less familiar. Getting skill 1 to level 5 isn't just about that basic control immunity. It also grants immunity to all turn meter pushback effects. And that is huge. It's a game changer in PvE think bosses like Rengoku or Sharon who just constantly push you back. And it's absolutely critical in PvP where manipulating turn meter is like half the battle. If you don't get that level 5 upgrade, she's still getting pushed around by turn meter effects, which really undermines that whole immune identity.
Okay, so that level 5 isn't optional then. It's basically required for her to function as intended. Got it. All right, moving on from skill 1, let's look at skill 2. Time to get serious. This one hits twice, single target again. And here's the interesting part. The damage goes up as the target's health goes down. A classic execute, right? Hints at big finishing potential. And the description also talks about a guaranteed stun. 1 turn stun if the target's below 50% health, and if she actually kills the target with the skill, she stuns all enemies for a turn. That sounds like potentially massive crowd control, but what does guaranteed actually mean here? Is it truly unstoppable?
That's a really important question because guaranteed here is, well, it's a bit misleading if you're not careful. It means the stun doesn't have a chance to be resisted by the enemy's effect resistance stat. So you don't need to build effect accuracy on Lilium for it to land. However, and this is the big caveat, it does not bypass immunity buffs. If an enemy has immunity up or is naturally immune to stun, she just won't stun them, period. So it's not quite the unstoppable force the word guaranteed might suggest. Upgrading this skill mostly just boosts the damage, lowers that health percentage threshold for the stun, and increases the final damage boost. It's okay, but generally not the top Lattice priority.
All right, understood. Guaranteed, but with a big asterisk next to it. Okay. Then we get to her big one, the ultimate skill, skill 3. None can escape the lightning. This is where the fireworks should be, right? She buffs herself first, gets increased attack, increased speed, then bam, massive single target damage. Plus, it gets a 35% final damage boost against enemies over 60% health. It ignores shields entirely. And it does this thing where it seals the target's max health, equal to 50% of the damage dealt. That sealing part sounds quite unique. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, that sealing maximum health mechanic is actually pretty powerful conceptually. It's basically like destroying part of their max health pool for the rest of the fight. It doesn't come back. This is really good against those units that scale hard with health, like Tiamat is a prime example. Makes them permanently squishier. And when you're thinking about where to put your lattices, skill 3 is absolutely 100% the top priority, no question. It's got that high damage multiplier, plus leveling it up gives her more speed and reduces the cooldown. You basically want to be using the skill as often as humanly possible. So, okay, let's just pause for a second. We've looked at the kit. High multipliers, unique immunities, execute, max health seal. On paper, it sounds amazing. You'd absolutely think, okay, this is the new meta queen, especially being light dark and costing so much. But, and this is the elephant in the room, the thing causing all this discussion, this is where the disappointment really starts to hit home. Despite how impressive it all sounds, her actual damage output in real gameplay scenarios is, well, it's consistently underwhelming. Surprisingly so, often frustratingly so.
And yeah, this isn't just like a vague feeling players have. We're seeing actual numbers, direct comparisons that really hammer this point home. In testing, she consistently underperforms compared to damage dealers people already have built, like Yelli or Ditting, especially in harder PvE content, like the Shell Dungeons, White Fang, Count, places you need serious firepower. Ditting, for example, was noted in some tests to be doing basically double Liliam's damage, at least. And to give you some concrete numbers, people have shared her skill 3, right, the ultimate, with that huge 500% multiplier. In some tests, it was only hitting for around, like, 10,000 damage against Tiamat, maybe 11,000 against Sonya. For an ultimate skill from a premium light dark unit with that kind of multiplier, it's really bad. You expect way, way more bang for your buck. It really is. Like that Ferrari comparison you made earlier looks fancy, costs a fortune, but struggles to keep up.
Exactly. That captures the feeling perfectly. And there are some pretty clear reasons why her damage is so low, tied into how the game actually works. One of the biggest things holding her back is, honestly, the lack of a really strong passive ability that boosts her damage consistently. Think about other top damage dealers. Hoyan has a passive that just ramps up her damage dealt over time. Ditting has that amazing passive converting extra crit rate into crit damage. These passives are like hidden engines, constantly adding significant power beyond just the skill multipliers. Liliam, well, she just doesn't have that kind of crazy passive. Her passive is basically just the immunities, which are defensive, not offensive. Her kit is very much what you see is what you get in terms of damage numbers, and sadly, what you get just isn't enough.
Okay. So the passive is really where those other units get their edge. Liliam's is focused entirely elsewhere on the immunity side. That makes sense why she'd struggle to keep up damage-wise if she's missing that constant boost that others rely on.
Precisely. It's a huge factor. Another major issue is her stat requirements. They are incredibly demanding. Being light dark means she doesn't get elemental advantage easily, and she's harder to get copies of for imprints. But beyond that, her build needs are just really high. She absolutely needs 100% crit rate, not 85%, not 90%, 100%. Plus, you need really high attack and crit damage on top of that. You essentially need near perfect gear to make her work effectively, which is a massive hurdle, especially for newer players or those without god-tier gear sets just lying around.
And that's where someone like Yelli just feels so much easier, right? Yelli gets crit rate from her own buffs. And Ditting, like you said, converts extra crit rate, so you don't mind overcapping it. It makes hitting those damage thresholds much less painful. You don't have to, like, break your back farming for that perfect 100% crit rate substat roll while also needing massive attack and crit damage. It's a huge difference in ease of use.
A massive difference. Yeah. And compounding that crit rate issue, because there are currently no light element bosses anywhere in the game. Not in shell dungeons, not in modules, nowhere. Liliam never benefits from elemental advantage. This means she always needs that full 100% crit rate. Unlike, say, a fire unit fighting a nature boss who only needs 85% crit rate due to the elemental bonus. This often forces you to run a dedicated crit rate buffer on the team just for Liliam, like maybe an Elfie or someone similar. But squeezing into a dedicated buffer isn't always ideal, especially in endgame teams where every single slot needs to contribute significantly to damage or survival or control. It compromises team building. And one last point on her weaknesses. Her sustain is pretty poor. That lifesteal on her skill 1 based on damage dealt. Since her damage output is generally low, well, her self-healing is minimal too. She's not effective as a bruiser who can take hits and heal back up. If she's not hitting hard, she's barely healing. So you can't really sustain herself through much incoming damage.
Okay, so it's stacking up, isn't it? Low base damage due to no passive, incredibly high gear requirements, forces awkward team building, and poor sustain. It's pretty clear she's not the all-around damage monster people might have hoped for from a light-dark unit. But let's be fair, her design does seem very pointed. It looks like she was built primarily with player versus player, PvP in mind.
That definitely seems to be the intention, yes. Her core strength, her main selling point, is being a direct answer to heavy crowd control teams in PvP. That immunity to control, and especially the turn meter pushback immunity again, if you invest fully in skill 1 to level 5, lets her operate freely against teams that rely on stuns, freezes, slows, and pushbacks to win. You could try and build her as a pure glass cannon in PvP. Focus entirely on speed and damage stat, try to go first or quickly after your opener, and just burst down a key enemy target immediately.
Okay, so a dedicated anti-control PvP unit.